Hi, everyone. Welcome to Office Hours. If you're here on YouTube and you'd like to be part of the conversation, you first have to travel to Zoom. You'll see a link down below. And once you're in Zoom, you click on the link down below and you'll end up in Mukana. And that's where you can ask questions and vote on questions and be part of the conversation. If you think that you can add something to the conversation, and one of the things that, a lot of people say is that, well, I just don't, I don't know as much as everyone here. We are a composite. We know a lot because of all of us, not because of one of us. And so each person that becomes part of the panel has their own background, their own experience, and their own knowledge. And sometimes people here only answer one question a week or one question a day, and that is exactly the design. Is that it's a group of all of us. So if you think you have something related to production or virtual production, and you might have a good opinion or a strong understanding of something in that area, even if it isn't traditional media, we'd love to have you on the panel. Please join us. You can come in early at 6 o'clock. And see if your kit is ready for being on the panel. And then we do mic checks at 6:40. So at 6:40, once we start mic checks between 6:40 and 6:45, we're not going to add more people to the panel. So if you want to test your stuff, come in a little early. The discussion is all over the place. I think today we're mostly talking about the Super Bowl, but we talk about all kinds of things in the early morning. And then at 7 o'clock, we start general Q&A. Now today we're going to do 2 hours of general Q&A, but normally that we have a second hour that is specific, and you'll get an overview of what's coming in the email that you get every morning. So we put the agenda for the week into that email. And we've got some award-winning audio engineers coming in tomorrow, so it should be a really good one. Talking about audio kits, so we're pretty excited about that. AJA will be here Wednesday. Talking about the color analyzer. We moved that from last week. We're going to talk about studio design on Thursday. That was a request that a lot of people had. So we're going to talk about studio design and how to put that together. And then we're going to talk about the basics of streaming to AWS. It's something, this is just going to be, hello world of how to get an RTMP or Elemental link into AWS on Friday. And then of course we have education on Saturday, as well as the great Andy Carluccio and his training with Zoom OSC. Holy smokes. I gotta tell you, my brain was like steaming after the 2.5 hours of Andy talking, and then another hour in the Zoom rooms. And I think I almost overheated. My brain almost overheated with what was possible. So you definitely want to, even if you've missed the opportunity to be doing the Zoom OSC, I would definitely watch it and be part of the conversation. But we'll be continuing. A couple hundred of us will continue to learn how to build Zoom OSC. And even I'll have something I promise by next Saturday. Andy's giving me a hard time because I didn't do my homework. And so I'm going to try to catch up with all of you by next week. All right, Bill, let's go ahead and take it away.
Okay, we're starting with Jonas Dattel of a friend in Reutlingen, Germany, who says, just got my Mixpre-3 II. Is there a way to set it up via a PC?
I think you set it up all in the Mixpre. I don't think there's not a lot of setup exterior. Go ahead, Mickey.
Yeah, I'm not very familiar with Windows, but I know you need to download how do you pronounce it? Asio Driver for it. And I think Guy might know more about working that out.
Go ahead, Guy.
There isn't really an app on the PC. That's not the way it works. There is an app on an iDevice, but even that is pretty basic. Like the look of it is just this. It's essentially,
you're talking about Wingman?
Yeah, the Wingman app.
And that runs it. It doesn't really set it up. It doesn't really set up.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so there's not a whole lot there. So the answer is no. There's not really a whole lot you can do on a PC with these. Even on the 8 series, you don't set them up that way. There is another app for the 8 series, but that doesn't really answer your question. So yeah, you got to do it all by hand, go in advanced, and then jump in the post show, and we can walk you through it if you need some help.
Yeah, absolutely. And definitely the first thing you do is switch it to advanced, because there's a lot of things that are missing until you turn it on advanced. Go ahead, Chris.
It seems to me I remember somebody saying something about you can save your settings after, and that's not available like as a preset as a file, because it would be awesome if there was like the Mickey preset that you could just share with
people. Really could do that. We do that. We do that because we had to do 22 of them.
Yeah.
And I know that what was done was that it was set up on one and then just copied from one to the next all the way over to set the rest of them up. So as long as they're in the same.
Mickey.
Yeah, no, go ahead,
Just
Mickey.
saying.
I'll have to check that on the Mixpre. I know you can save presets, but I know how you do it. Like if you can transfer it to like an SD card, I know
You
you can
definitely
save it
can.
on the unit itself. But yeah, another thing to bear in mind is the Mixpre. He has the 3. I believe it acts as a as a 6 in 2 out interface. So you can set up exactly what channels the Mixpre sends to the computer uh, in the output menu when you're in advanced mode.
Yep. Jason?
All I would add to that is that, yeah, it does require an Asio driver, and Asio stands for Audio Stream Input Output, and it was invented by Steinberg. And yes, that is the way to get multiple channels in and out.
You sound super thin today. Your audio is super thin. So just not sure exactly why you sound like you're coming in from a little radio. Next question.
Moving on to the question from Jake Hamilton of North Hollywood. He says he's looking for a system similar to Dropbox file request to collect media from 70 plus nominees for an award show. Needs to be simple, reliable, and able to handle file sizes over 100 gigabytes.
Go ahead, Bill.
I did this for the Rocky Mountain Emmys a few years ago, and what we used was simple FTP. It's size agnostic. You have to have somebody somewhere who's got a reasonably fast connection who can aggregate them. We did that to the producer of the show. She was working at a TV station. It ended up there, and then I got them on thumb drive after that. That is one way. There are other ways, but FileZilla and FTP, I think, is the simplest way if people have at least a modicum of technical chops.
Go ahead, Chris.
For a while on our business site, we had a system where we could very quickly build a client-specific drop site. And it was really cool because we could like upload a logo and stuff like that. As it turned out, and it was drop dead simple. Anybody could upload, and you could upload. One of the biggest advantages, you could upload from an iOS device, and it didn't auto scale it like it does when you try and send something from an iPhone. But it ended up being a giant security issue. I probably shouldn't have told this story, but I thought it was going to be much more interesting. Sorry.
Go ahead, Jeremy.
Yeah, so some of the applications that help a lot in visual effects will be, because we're obviously working with huge file sizes from a lot of different locations, and with security as a factor. So Media Shuttle from Signient is one that is quite trusted and used quite a bit. And that also has the sort of, if you've got a lot of R&D ability, you can set up custom portals and things like that. But if you just need an out-of-the-box solution, they've got that. And then IBM Aspera is another fairly trusted option. I think, not to disagree, Bill, about FTP, but the downside with FTP when you've got a large distance will be that, large distance can be slower file, transfers and things like that. So we've relied on Aspera and Media Shuttle from Signient.
Is Media Shuttle very expensive? I know Aspera is.
It's expensive in the beginning, but I would argue that you make up for it on what you're not doing on your support, because it sort of manages your nodes and your transfer. It's using your entire bandwidth, and it's going via multiple routes. So it's expensive initially, but worth it over time.
It's interesting because I don't think that, for instance, Frame.io does a kind of a dead drop style upload. You have to make everybody collaborators and let them upload stuff. You can't just say, here's a folder for you to put full files in. It seems like a missing thing for Frame.io is to have something where you can just have for clients or for people you're working with, have a class of user that is, I have access to write but not read, and I can just throw stuff in here as needed. And that just doesn't seem to exist right now for Frame.io. Frame.io would be the natural.
I'm not 100% sure, but Frame.io has a little transfer app. I wonder if
they do, but it doesn't.
You.
No, but you still have to be a collaborator or a member, and so that's it's just, you can't just send someone a link and just say, hey, put stuff here. And I think that is a missing opportunity for Frame.io. Go ahead, Michael.
Is Dropbox not viable for that? Because I've done
50 gig limit. 50 gig limit is the problem with Dropbox. If
Oh,
you have anything
okay.
more than 50 gigs, it won't work.
Well, yeah, because I've done a number of them that way, but I guess I've never
Totally
hit the
works if
limit.
you have smaller. If you have
Yeah.
smaller files, it works great. Jason and then Chris.
Would use Google Forms mixed with Google Drive. I don't think that there's a 50 gig limit, especially if you have the professional version. Hopefully
It's just
this
so slow.
sounds a little better.
Like Google Drive is so slow on the upload and download. I don't know if that would be 50 gigs would be like, I mean, it would be next year's show that you'd be still downloading stuff. Go ahead. We lost Chris, I think. Go ahead, Bill.
I just wanted to note, I'm a little leery of Dropbox because when you install it, it does put a lot of deep hooks into your system.
Well, I don't use Dropbox
it.
that way.
Yeah.
I use the web version of Dropbox. I don't have the install of Dropbox on my computer. So
It's really hard to detangle from your system once you install it. So I'm leery of it for that reason.
I won't install it. I won't let it install, but you can use Dropbox on the web without installing any apps. And that is the way to do that, in my opinion. My only problem right now is I have a ton of stuff on the web that I can't get out of the web easily from Dropbox. So I'm actually going to install on a computer Dropbox specifically just to pull everything off of Dropbox so that I can close Dropbox. So that's kind of the process. But I have to let it sync for like a week to get that to happen. Go ahead, Jan.
Yeah, I use Dropbox exclusively at our company. That way, everybody has access to everybody's files. What I do is I have 2 different accounts so that I keep what I want personal that I can't let my employees see. And then everybody has access and we could share files. And it's seamless. It works amazingly well. And I trust it completely. It's a great opportunity to back stuff up.
Great. Next question.
Moving on to Courtney Gooden's question, his most upvoted question, which is, if you are using an external mic muting device and leaving your Zoom mic unmuted, does Zoom still try to do echo cancellation on your feed because the return audio is still feeding back into Zoom from your USB interface? So is it better to mute Zoom?
I think that the only thing is, one thing we saw is that sometimes mute isn't always mute with your analog equipment. So I think that that's the biggest problem, is that you think you're muted and you're not. Mickey?
Courtney, what do you mean by the return audio is still feeding back into Zoom from the interface?
Well, for example, on my mixer, I'm monitoring myself through the mixer, and the mixer is the USB interface. So the mixer is getting the feedback. So I'm hearing you guys through the mixer. But if I were to mute just my microphone on my end, and I'm assuming that Zoom is canceling any return that's coming out of that mixer down the USB return to the computer. So I'm assuming that it's canceling me to prevent feedback. But if I mute my microphone separately, does it still perform that? I think it only
performs it if it hears it. Like if you're not sending any sound, it's just going to remove nothing.
But I'm wondering, does by muting it in the interface, in the Zoom interface, does it just stop trying to do that so it saves computer cycles? So it's it just turns off its echo cancellation because it knows you're muted at Zoom.
It might save. I don't think it has any effect on what we hear, but it may have an effect on cycles. Mickey and then Jeffrey.
Yeah, I find that there's a good amount of little mixers that have a USB interface built in. A lot of them amazingly do mix minus of the USB feed.
Yeah, I'm not sure if mine does or not. That's what I'm using right now as a mixer. But I hear myself in side tone, which is what I like. But Zoom's got to be hearing me too, so I don't know how it works. I don't know how it works.
So yeah, if it's not doing some sort of what do you call this? Why am I blanking? Mix minus, exactly.
If it doesn't hear it, it's not really doing a mix minus. The echo cancellation is taking a waveform that's going in and removing it from the waveform that's going out. What we find is that if without any change, if we just give everybody earpieces that they don't, so that their audio isn't going in, it goes to full duplex immediately. Like it will, like Zoom will just then let people talk over top of each other and let them go back and forth. It's only doing it when it hears, that return. Here's the same, what's going into the speaker. When what's going into the speaker is the same thing that it registered going out of the speaker. What goes into the microphone is the same thing that registers going into the speaker is when it's activating. If it doesn't hear that, I don't think it activates at all. It's still probably burning some cycles, but it's not I don't think it's doing anything to the audio, Jeffrey, and I don't think the cycles are very significant, Jeffrey. And then
Yeah,
Jason.
keep in mind that the echo noise cancellation is happening at the computer level, not back at the Zoom level. So it's probably it's such a low cycle that it's just doing it constantly, whether you're muted or not, because you never know when some fragment comes in and it needs to cancel that. So it's always working.
Jason?
Yeah, I mean, part of my audio chain is the Aphex channel, and the Aphex channel has a piano pedal that I can put down to do either hardware mute or hardware unmute. And I mean, I've used it extensively, and as far as I can tell, it is only monitoring input, and it's monitoring input whether you ask it to or not. So I don't think it really matters.
Next question.
Comes from J.J. McKinnon in Santa Venetia, Marin County, California. And he says, which alternatives to the Meraki VPN or Teamviewer's VPN have panelists used to good effect for remote USB control? Note, for this type of motivation, panelist Doug Ferguson expressed some issues with intermittent availability with his Teamviewer VPN on Saturday.
What was the issue, Doug?
Well, I was trying to control a 3-play.
Oh, right.
With my controller here on a remote 3-play, and we could not get it to work behind the firewall of, it was at a high school. It was a college basketball game on Fox Regional, but we were still behind a high school firewall or high school internet, which I think was locked down. We tried several VPNs to get to it, and it just wasn't working. And so
I've had trouble getting a 3-play panel to talk to a 3-play playback when I was in the same room. so anyway, like I don't know if it's necessarily the firewall, but it could be. There's a reason I don't use it very often.
Well, so it worked. So I'm in my basement office, and my truck is in the driveway. It worked with the VPN just going from my computer to the one in the truck. So it worked. It was brilliant. Like, I thought, oh my gosh, this is going to be a game changer. I can be a replay operator for anybody if this works. And then the first time we try it on a real show, not happening.
Yeah. I mean, that's what that's why you need rehearsals at the space, to see that if it's working or not, and did you see it before the show or in the?
No, I mean, we spent a good 3 hours. I mean,
yeah,
just 3 hours of just trying to get the VPN to work. I mean, the truck was turned on at noon for a 7 p.m. game, and it was so difficult because I was Teamviewered in. I could see the 3-play. I just couldn't control it with the controller. So they pulled a graphics operator who had never run a 3-play before, and I'm just trying to teach him to run the controls, and it was not fun.
Roscoe,
I don't know if this will help, but to use a traditional VPN, I have to go through all kinds of hoops to get into my college. But if I use Chrome desktop remote, because I have control over both computers on both ends, it just works. It tunnels.
The problem is you got a USB connection. It's not like it's not using a desktop. It's not remoting desktop. It's remoting hardware.
So, I know. Okay, I know it's a different way, but it works.
Yeah. It's. I mean, usually with what we're doing with Meraki, where we have to fight the fight to get the Meraki to work. But once the Meraki works, then we're in. But it's a matter of fighting the fight with IT to get that in. And then generally what we've done, we've definitely worked at locations where we couldn't get it to work. And that's when we use either cellular or bonded cellular to get on our own. That's why a lot of our machines have cellular backups, is specifically to get to just, if we have definitely corporations and colleges that we could not, the IT would not open the ports that we needed them to open. And then we just moved to cellular. And is it perfect? Not usually. There's a little higher latency, but it's better than not being able to get a hold of it, getting connected. Go ahead, Guy.
Yeah, I was just wondering if you called Jeff, Doug, because he probably would have said Teradici or something like that.
No, Jeff was part of the 3 hours.
He couldn't figure it out, huh? Wow.
We tried Teradici. We tried what's the other one? Hamachi. We tried all kinds of VPNs, and
You went
what
down
really
deep.
got me was like it would work, and then it would stop working, and like if
That's
it
packet
works,
analysis.
it should
That's
just
no,
work.
it's packet
Yeah,
analysis.
it's DPI. Something about, you know, either double NAT or the way that that high school had its creative firewall set up is inconsistent between incoming and outgoing.
What it's looking for is it's a dynamic firewall. And so what it's doing is it's looking for things that it doesn't expect and it's shutting them off. And that's how a lot of schools work. We have this problem all the time. So, you know, like schools will go like, hey, we can do a live hang. We used to have this problem with Hangouts. We can do a Hangout and the Hangout will work for 25 minutes. and then there's some kind of thing where if I see this for 25 minutes, I'm going to turn it off. And so if you're doing something that the network doesn't expect, it's a good catch-all for schools, because schools aren't really worried about, you know, corporate performance. They're worried about students doing things they were not supposed to do, you know. And so so what they do is they build a bunch of rules, and then they add on top of this, hey, if anything happens that I don't expect, just turn that off. You know, they'll have to come to talk to me about it and I'll figure it out, because it's a bunch of kids and they're going to cause trouble. And so what you're dealing with when you're dealing with a school is a dynamic firewall. And so it will, what it means is probably when you started there, it probably worked. And then it'll stop. And then you'll have a certain amount of time that it won't let that happen. And then it'll open back up again, you know, because it you know, doesn't see it. And then you do it again and it stops. So
couldn't they create like a DMZ zone or just give us
they
a
absolutely
VPN?
can.
I mean,
you just have to talk to IT. Like
man. I was
will,
trying.
no, but I'm saying you have to talk to IT weeks before. Like this is at least days before. This is with corporate networks and especially with schools. And the problem we've had with schools is that they have very tight firewalls and very under-resourced IT divisions. So what that means is that they've built a set of rules, and it's not, oftentimes the school doesn't have anybody on staff that manages it. It's an external client. It costs them money every single time they call them, and they don't really want to make any changes. And so nobody at the school knows how to do it. So the challenge, we always kind of warn people, they're like, well, we could get a school for free to do our event. And I'm like, it's not going to be free. You know, like there's a whole bunch of unhappiness that's going to come with trying to connect to a high school or a college or whatever, because unless you have someone who's got, as soon as you talk to their IT department, you know pretty quickly how deep the water is going to be. It's either going to be great because they've got really smart people running their IT, or it's going to be horrible. If they say the IT is outsourced, you're host. Like you're just, you know, like you're, you know, because that means that they won't have the people. You'll need weeks to work through that, and they'll want you to pay for it or they won't want to do it because it costs them money, because it's not something that is part of the standard package. So that's the challenge you have with schools. It's something that, that was a couple of years of my life of dealing with integrating with schools, and it was the same all over the place. Yeah. Next question.
Jan Landy's interested in why everyone's mic settings change a bit from day to day when you do not change any of the settings manually on your end.
Zoom is changing how it manages it all the time. You know, like that's one of the biggest reasons. And then also, you know, I don't know. My system is somewhat stable, but I'm constantly moving my mic around and changing mics and changing things. And I'm using my equipment for other things. So I know that's for me, that's why it's an issue. Go ahead, Bill, and then Mickey.
Yeah, my thought would be, and this is not technically, I understand this. This is, you know, if two people with loud mics come into Zoom and it's trying to average them to a correct level, then two people with soft mics come in, it's probably re-averaging. So everybody's mic as they come in changes the average point. And then for us, we're unique in that we go through our mic checks and we try to get everything dialed to the center point. And that's another kind of global change that it's trying to average through. I just think it's recalculating a lot. Oops, you're muted.
Oh, sorry, Mickey.
Yeah. For me, I think it's just people speak differently day to day, minute to minute. So, you know, one day you wake up energized, another day you wake up still, you know, a little tired, and things vary. You know, even like a musician during sound check sounds different from, you know, show level.
Well, and also, I mean, one of the other things about it is that we. Like for instance, I just turned on as an aside while we were talking about it, I realized, I didn't have original audio on. So now I'm a little low. And it was because of probably why mine was a little hot before was because I had turned it off. Oops, now I'm probably really loud. Hold on. Let me see if now I'm so anyway, I think that the other issue is that we're trying to hit a very small target. Negative 24 dB LUFS is, most people in Zoom don't worry about that. They're probably plus or minus 10, 15, between every person. So for us to hit it as close as a couple dB is just that it's a much smaller target than most people are trying to hit. So that's why we have to constantly be checking for it. We're more sensitive. It shows up here because we're actually measuring something that's much finer than everybody else. Go ahead, Bill.
Yeah, as somebody who does a good bit of voiceover, when I'm in the booth, I work at an entirely different level and presence than I normally do here. This to me is very conversational, so I'm trying to have a lot of dynamics and generally interpret more. When I'm doing spots, I push a good bit more because I know most of the time my clients want me to work over a music bed or something like that, and the message has to distinctly get out. So I just work differently.
There was a great TikTok last night of a TV announcer who she decided to talk to her husband as if she was on TV at home, and by the end he had like a pillow over his head, like, I don't want to hear you anymore. All right, next question. We're gonna move on.
Okay, Courtney Gooden's here. What was your favorite commercial in the Super Bowl yesterday?
Does anyone have go ahead, Jason?
I'd say Sam Jackson as the CG with all the mocap was probably my favorite. Either that or the Doritos 3D. Both of those I thought were phenomenal.
Go ahead, Courtney.
Yeah, I'd vote for the flat mat Doritos 3D. Paul Wallace's neighbor down there, Mukana.
Yeah, go ahead, Paul.
Yeah, Dana Carvey and Mike Myers doing this SNL. That just cracked me up. And I had seen Dana Carvey on the Tonight Show a couple nights ago. He was using this microphone.
Go ahead, Bill.
I always go for emotional connection. So for me, it was the Springsteen thing he did for Jeep. I thought that was brilliantly written and brilliantly produced.
Yeah, I thought that commercial was a whole different level of commercial. Like, it was just really, 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 really well done. My favorite was the Will Ferrell. Because I start laughing the moment Will Ferrell shows up on a screen. Like just starts, there's just like whatever is going to happen. Just seeing him, I know that something is going to be great. Like I don't have, and and the funny thing is that only thing that ruined it for me for the Super Bowl is there is a longer version of that ad that I had already watched on YouTube with my kids. We were watching a lot of the ads before the show, and so there's a minute and a half version of that that's even funnier than the commercial. So I was I think my brain was piecing those back, all the old stuff, all the stuff that was in the whole commercial back into it. So the online version is better. It's so funny. It just his timing is just unbelievable. Anyway, Jen.
I like the Ashton Kutcher and Mia Kunis commercial with the Doritos did you have any of those Doritos? And she said, no. Yeah, I believe you.
yeah. That was a good one too. So there you go. Next question.
Actually, it's sort of ish related. Who is Budweiser's agency of record, and how did they spend Budweiser's marketing dollars for this year's Super Bowl? That's from Sky Gleason here on the panel.
Yeah, I mean, with almost any corporate thing, especially something as big as Budweiser, we should not assume that anything's being done out of altruism. Like, I think that as someone who works and has worked in this industry, so when they say, "Oh, we're not doing the ads and we're giving them to the to the people," that's just a different type of advertising. So the fact that Bud Light, I don't know who their agency is, but the fact that they spent a ton of money on Bud Light but just not on Budweiser is kind of fake. It's kind of a fake thing. Anyway, go ahead, Courtney.
Yeah, it's guys in your neighborhood, Sky. I think Wyden and Kennedy still handles Bud Light.
They're in Portland. Yeah.
And
they're super smart.
They also have
very, very smart.
Oh yeah, I used to do a lot of work for them from Microsoft. Yeah, and Bud has its own in-house agency for a lot of stuff too. But I don't know, they pipe it through other agencies for creative, I think.
And if you're going to be creative, you're going to think outside the box on how to do marketing. Wyden and Kennedy is one of the best, of being outside the box and doing something that isn't just straight ahead. So I've done some work for them, and they're smart folks. Jason.
And again, in the ad buys, it's a big bucket of money that they're given, and they say, bring us lots of eyeballs and bring us, sales. So,
but also, I mean, okay, so they didn't buy advertising, but they had to have paid almost the same amount of money for those Bud Light
There you
seat
go.
covers. They
Yep.
covered these huge billboards on the wide shots that were Bud Light all the way down the field. That cost at least as much as the ads that they're not spending. So I mean, you know, like they just
Well, my
moved it.
favorite is when Bell Helicopter did not pay, but they did bring the helicopter in and land, and then the guy jumps out from on the 50-yard line and lets the star come out with a big giant bell on the back of his jersey. It's like, no, they didn't pay anything, but the advertising value was pretty big.
Well, that's Sony. The Sony camera is being used.
There
as
you
another-
go.
another
Yeah,
good
That's
example.
product placement.
Yeah,
It's
that's not even
it's-
product placement. They're paid. I mean, they're not. They didn't even just Sony didn't just offer the cameras. They paid the money to put to talk about those press releases. Go ahead, Jason, and then Jake.
Yeah, I have an adjacent question about those seat covers. Was any of that keyed, or was all of that practical? I mean, the chroma keys were awful. Can I just say that on the air? Like I've kind of never seen a worse chroma key. We were talking about that earlier. But the seat covers, was any of that keyed and tracked, or was it all just practical?
It's all practical, as far as I could tell. I mean, it all looked like bad cardboard. So
And
it's,
I
everyone can
think
spend
the-
out.
those-
Who?
I think
What was
that-
the talk about like fleecing people? $100 so you got a piece of cardboard at a in a seat. Just fleeced a lot of people like that. That is the biggest scam I've ever seen.
The
Jake?
way they got that together is that they said if you bought one of those, then you would be put in a drawing for 2 tickets for next year's Super Bowl.
Yeah, scam. Jake.
Man, that's interesting. Was it just me, or it seemed like there was an unusually high percentage of just CBS promoting itself and its own content, and like the Paramount Plus?
It's all part of the. You definitely want to. I mean, you definitely. It's probably that. Well, so it could have been that there were less ad fills because other people were pulling out. That there was more space for them to promote their own. So usually, what you do is you fill in your ads where things aren't bought, right? You don't give away that inventory. I mean, you don't like not use the inventory. You have a certain number of slots that were created for the show, and you'll sell as many to exterior as you can, and then you'll use them internally. So the Paramount campaign about Paramount, I think that was a planned campaign. But when they show hits that promote the shows, the actual shows, and we saw so many of those, that is fill. That's filler. So the ones that don't look like they were done for the Super Bowl. Absurd Paramount story.
And you'll also
Jam.
see that. Sorry.
Jam.
And to go back to the original question, in a land far away, many years ago in a different life, I used to be a celebrity broker where I would put celebrities into commercials. And although I worked with the end client, it always went through an advertising agency for the so that they could CYA themselves in case something went wrong. They could always say, well, we'll change advertising agencies. So I'm sure at Budweiser they have the same policy. They have a group of people on the creative side inside, but they hire an outside agency just to protect themselves in case something goes wrong.
Well, a brand like Budweiser isn't going to have an agency. They're going to have 150 agencies. They're going to have people who do specific things. Latin America, they're going to have them all over the place.
Yep. Paul?
Yeah. Did anyone see the Reddit ad? It was 5 seconds. It was 5 seconds. What do you think of the Reddit ad, Alex?
I didn't grok it, and I'm curious how many people went, if it was effective at getting people to go find it or do Googling about it, because it just came up really fast, and it, and so it was an interesting take on it. I mean, doing things like that seem like they're a glitch. It's an interesting advertising.
It was their entire advertising budget. 5 seconds.
Right. Yeah, exactly. It's good. It was interesting. Next question.
Moving on to Dan Huber of Erie, Pennsylvania, who says, in thinking of the watch party test, would a platform like Clubhouse work better for discussion while watching?
Well, not really. I mean, like, we still need Mukana to do that because it's like Clubhouse just seems like chaos to me. I mean, like, it's like, we'll figure it out. I mean, we're going to do it, and then we'll see what happens as we kind of experiment with it. But it's the way they have it set up without any, I mean, just having random people come in and talk would be a thing. Go ahead, Roscoe, and then Bill, and then Paul.
Well, it would kind of be an ongoing numerical round robin is the only way it would work. You know, number 1 talks, and number 2 talks, and number 3 talks, number 4 talks, because randomness, there's no hand raise.
Well, I think that Clubhouse could be a good one to listen to, but you can also listen to it in Mukana, and I don't know how much it would. I don't think you need to be in Zoom to do it. I think you can listen to it in Mukana. That's kind of the design. Go ahead, Bill.
Yeah, I'm just not sure at this point that Clubhouse, it's not designed for that. It's designed for what they're trying to do. And I'm getting more and more firmly of the idea that trying to overlay a different structure onto their structure may end up being more hassle than it's worth. We'll see. I'm looking forward to the tests we'll do.
Yeah, go ahead, Paul.
Yeah, it'd make a good back channel. I mean, if you want to have like a Mystery Science Theater audio only commentary on office hours, you could have it running parallel with office hours, and you could be using it like a comm system kind of,
maybe.
And it would have to be moderated though, because you need a moderator to control who talks and when they talk.
I have that here. Like I don't like I think that the problem is for me is I view it as a big funnel. Like I view Clubhouse as a big funnel for bringing people to office hours. Like that's possible. I don't know if it, but I don't know if it adds anything. So for instance, if someone's listening in Mukana, they don't have to deal with logging in or having an account on office hour. They don't have to think about having an account in Clubhouse. They don't have to be invited. They don't have to do anything else. They just open up the page and hit play. And then they can have all the same, listening capabilities without being in Zoom. The problem with the movie night is not our ability to aggregate people or deal with questions. The problem with movie night is that the Netflix party or whatever, or media, whatever they call it now, is horribly limited, in how many people it can handle. And so it was really glitchy, and so we can scale up immediately. I have to admit, I went from, hey, let's use this to, hey, let's replace this pretty quickly. So we're looking at what it would take for us to do the same thing that they're doing, because they're just using exterior APIs to do that. And so I'm more interested in getting, doing something else than using Netflix Party, because it's so poorly written. Bill?
Yeah, the thing to me is that, Clubhouse being all audio and trying to recreate an environment like we have here on office hours, right now, Alex gets the luxury and utility for the show of being able to see that, oh, Bill and Mickey have raised their hands. This is an audio question. Mickey would have a better answer for this type of thing. So let's go to Mickey. In an unveiled system like Clubhouse, how do you know? I mean, you know the names of people, but I don't think you have as easy a way to both call. And then the other thing that Alex does well is limit if he thinks it's going too long or off. Those things just drone on often, and nobody cuts people off that I've seen on Clubhouse.
What I will say is that as we build the back channel for the panelists, which we're working on right now, us using Mukana and Clubhouse could be lethal. Because we can then organize each other very, very tightly and have a very tight conversation in a way that I don't see possible on Clubhouse right now. Next question.
Moving on to JJ McKenna of Santa Venetia, Marin County. Without advertising companies driving the content and monies of events like the Super Bowl, what would drive the content? Note, in some cultures, state-sponsored events have particular motives promoting excellence. Does our culture have support for this type of motivation?
Well, the Super Bowl wouldn't exist without all those advertisers. I mean, it's a crazy amount of money being spent on the Super Bowl. like it is at a whole different, it's, I don't know how much, it's incredible numbers for that kind of activation. And so you couldn't do the event without it. I think this is the challenge there. Roscoe and then Bill.
Yeah, I think PBS fills that role. I mean, excellence in children's programming, or, stuff designed from an educational standpoint. I think there's some that our culture does support it.
Go ahead, Bill.
It's widely understood, but I don't think people realize how big a deal it is that the function of all those shows is to aggregate an audience to which you can sell to advertisers. So in that respect, the Super Bowl is the biggest funnel of eyeballs on the planet at this point. Maybe there are some, World Cup may be that globally, but for the biggest consumer capitalist type market, America, that's what it does. And it does it really well. And I don't think they make any bones about it. And I don't mind that. It's a commercial vehicle first, even before it's a football game, I think.
And I think that, the United States does does do that. They just don't do it internally. We call it Voice of America. So it's not like we don't build our own broadcasts. We just don't do it here. There's a lot of in the United States. I think that fundamentally there's kind of a there is a sensitivity to the government controlling information, and there always has been. I mean, from day one here. So I think that's the issue. Which it does a lot of that already, but having it actually run its own broadcast is something that, other than PBS, is not something that people are super excited about. As Americans, I think culturally you'd have a hard time with it. They'd rather get ads than have it centrally controlled. Go ahead, Roscoe.
I had an uncle do 40 years of Voice of America. I mean, it's about projecting our culture into other countries and oftentimes trying to overthrow the government in that country. I don't see it as really promoting excellence within our country.
No, I said we don't do it inside of our country. We have our own voice. I mean, the government has its own voice. It's called Voice of America. I'm not saying that it's
really only projecting out. It's
exactly, as I said, we don't do it here.
Okay.
We don't do it here. We do it everywhere else. Go ahead, Courtney.
Yeah, in communist countries and countries that are not driven by capitalist ideals, it's national pride is what drives sports and viewership, and they use that as basically a propaganda tool. So in a way, advertising is the same thing, only it gets us to buy stuff for propaganda.
It's all propaganda. All right, next question.
Werner in Warsaw, Poland says, and Mickey, don't get freaked out by this, I am peeking over Mickey's shoulder. I see audio hijack, lots going on, and the Waves loudness meter. How do you use those to do your audio leveling for the show? Look, he looked over his shoulder. He was worried for a second that somebody was over.
So what I have running an audio hijack here is just a plain old WLM meter, which is here in the webinar as a panelist, so we can do our mic checks. And I also have a chain going on that is what is feeding the audio stream in Mukana. And what I have there is a multi-band compressor. That's the first processor in the chain, and that's essentially handling excessive what do you call this, low end, like maybe if someone's coming in really boomy, or if someone's coming in really sibilant, that multi-band compressor is doing that processing for that. And then after that, I have just a regular plain old transparent sounding compressor that's just managing the peaks and valleys of people's audio. Then after that, I have another multi-band compressor there that's just very lightly just gluing things together, having things come out a little smoother. And that's what's going out to Mukana. And I'm also recording that for the podcast for whenever that would happen.
That's great. Next question.
Gavin Gratian, of Manchester, UK. To what extent is turning it off and back on again still a winning formula in your work life? Acting for a friend.
Jason.
All right, I'll take this one. So the answer is it depends upon what the error that you're trying to address is. If it's a memory leak, if it's something that that is the result of something which kind of degrades with time, then yes, absolutely, rebooting it. Your Apple TV is a perfect example. A Roku box is a perfect example because it's designed to be a closed loop. Things like computers that can lock up drivers but don't have great programming to unlock a driver, it could also help there.
Go ahead, Sky, and then Mickey, and then Bill.
Well, isn't it because you're going through a reset? So you're wiping out virtual memory, or you're wiping out the cache. And so, I mean, there are smarter people than I, but that going through a process to, get me restarted of a system to check with, it reaches out, it shakes hands with the mouse, the keyboard, the hard drive. So I'll let somebody
occasionally, all these programs are using variables, and there's some variable that's causing a problem. And when you restart it, you're going back to, let me go back to the set state of variables. And oftentimes that's what clears things out. Go ahead, Mickey, and then Bill, and then Paul, and then Courtney.
Yeah, in terms of using it as a tool to sort of to fix issues, for any piece of gear, a computer or even a piece of hardware that is mainly software driven, then that includes things like the Mixpre-3s or the higher end recorders. it's pretty high on my chain in terms of trying to fix problems. For things like, say, network switches, which aren't, very much, they're not really software driven. It wouldn't be that high in my list of things to try out to fix things.
Go ahead, Bill, and then Paul.
I just wanted to very quickly add turning things back on in the right order, because sometimes if a device is off, another device will not see that it's there. And if you turn things on in the correct order, the new device coming on will look back and say, oh, I can talk to that. We can negotiate and connect. So the order is sometimes real important.
Good.
Yeah, and on a PC, just hit Control-Alt-Delete. It brings up your process manager, and you can. It's very fine-grained. You can stop processes, start
really
them.
careful with that.
Assign.
Yeah, you can stop the wrong
priority.
processes too. Yeah, I mean, you can
assign
do that with
priority.
kill. You can do that with kill as well inside of a Linux terminal or a Unix terminal. But you have to be careful what you kill. You can sometimes really do some crazy things by killing the wrong process. Courtney?
Well, as a troubleshooting technique, it's a valid way, if you have something that's mixed, basically a mixture of software and hardware, it's a valid way of separating it from, is it a software problem or is it a hardware problem? If you reboot and it comes back, it might be a hardware problem. If you reboot and it's not a problem, then you know it's a software problem. So it lets you make that first distinction to know where to look for your next software, for your troubleshooting line.
Jason, and then we'll move on.
Sudo kill all finder. Whoops. No, I'll give you a faster way to reboot Windows. Windows D, Alt F4, enter. That'll do it.
Next question.
Moving on to James Babbitt in San Diego. Is there a security issue when people who don't have a Zoom account or who aren't logged into their Zoom account join a Zoom meeting?
Absolutely. What it means is that there's no accountability for them to come right back in. There's no handle that you have to kick them out. And so usually creating a registration and then creating the requirement for them to be logged in, which is what we do here, really takes the fun out of causing trouble. Like we're not a low-hanging fruit for someone who's Zoom bombing. We get it every once in a while. We've had a couple times. But as soon as we kick them out, they have to create a whole other account to get back in. Like it's not something that they can just jump in and cause trouble, because most of the folks that are Zoom bombing are not, they're not professional Zoom bombers. They're just kids. And so they're just having fun. And so if you put a little bit of a fence up, it does a lot to clean things up. So that it's not there's a bunch of things we do. The mic checks and requiring your camera to be on and locking it down and having it, like all those things are things that we've learned over time to do to not have to deal with too much trouble. So, and we still get it every once in a while. If I tweet out this, for instance, I just know that day we'll get somebody coming in because I tweeted out the link, which is why we're about to create a gap in between those two things. That's why I don't tweet that out directly. Next question.
Okay, Maranatha Spanish Church, our friends in Grand Rapids, Michigan, comes in with using SlingStudio. I can stream to our rtmp website using Wowza, but as soon as I use castr restream to YouTube, Facebook, and my website rtmp, it fails only on the website. I want all three to work at the same time. Any ideas? And he notes he's using the same key. It only fails on the custom rtmp website.
Go, Jason.
Something about your cascading style sheet on that website is going to be the issue. Either that or you're using something that has a competing plugin that is preventing the right thing from being added.
I think you're working too hard. I think you're using a whole bunch of different products to do the same thing. Many of these products will do everything that you want it to do, as opposed to I don't quite understand the process of using all of them. Go ahead, Guy.
Yeah, I'm wondering if it's just a frame rate or too high of a data rate push from castr, because if it's able to go up there, then it's obviously using Sling to go to Wowza, it's fine. But then the push from Wowza to that particular site, because he's saying he can go direct, so direct is fine, but it might be a frame rate or it might be it's expecting something different, and castr is not delivering that. So you're probably going to need to check the settings and see if it's a data rate thing or if it's a frame rate mismatch, something along those lines.
Yeah, you definitely be very careful with its input settings to make sure you're sending it what it expects to get, and that castr is sending out. It should be sending out what it needs, but it seems like a lot of pieces. Go ahead, Jeffrey.
One other thing, just so you know, if you don't need to use the RTMP to your website, YouTube does offer enclosure option that when you start a stream, it'll show up as the stream through a YouTube container. I don't know if taking that out of the equation might help on that.
Well, the only challenge with that is really if you don't want the cost of using YouTube is that people can click right through to your YouTube page. So you have to decide whether that's what you want or not. I mean, that's why they make it available. So you can embed it. It's easy to embed YouTube into your page, and a lot of people do it, but they can click on that logo and go to YouTube, and maybe that's fine. You'll build up a YouTube following, but that's the cost of free. And so that's the thing you have to kind of look at. If you don't want that, then you need to move to something like Vimeo or which is live stream or whatever, which will let you turn all that stuff off at a cost, I think $1,000 a year or something like that. So those are things to think about there. But like, for instance, again, Vimeo has this kind of the most wrapped up in a way that is nice and easy to use. But then you can also do things that we're going to start talking about AWS and being able to scale that up, over time. So there's ways to kind of hack through it as well. Go ahead, Guy.
Yeah, one last thing, I would just try and sign up for a month of restream.io and see if you have the same issue, because it might be a little more stable on that platform because they're just bigger, and so they might have figured some of these things out already.
Yep, absolutely. Next question.
Jonas Dattel of Reutlingen says, just installed the Asio driver for the Mixpre. I see only one mic in Zoom, for example. Is that how it should be? And note, after a reboot, when I select the Mixpre to output to my PC, the video or music just stops.
Go ahead, Mickey.
Yeah, in Zoom, the Mixpre, even though it can send 6 channels from the mixer going into the computer, it will show up just as a single interface in Zoom. Now, if you open up an application that can take in multiple channels, like say a DAW, or maybe, I don't know, I guess what's equivalent of loopback, voice meter, banana, potato, carrots, you should be able to see all those individual channels, and you can, as I mentioned earlier, you can set what is sent to those 6 channels through the output menu of the Mixpre. And regarding when you select Mixpre as the output, the video or music just stops. Does it actually stop in the player, or do you just not hear it anymore? Because if it's still showing that it's playing but you're not hearing it, on the Mixpre you need to set up either channels, actual audio tracks on the Mixpre to get the feed from the USB connection, or set up your headphone monitoring as and get the audio for your headphones from the USB connection. So either you feed the USB to tracks or just to your monitoring output.
Next question.
Jan Landy in Las Vegas says, is anyone using a sleep app to monitor their sleep? And if so, what's the best app that you've found so far? On iOS, I'm using Sleep Score, Sleepwatch, Apple Sleep, and Pillow. I'm leaning towards Sleepwatch, but what would the panel's advice be, comments, and or opinions?
Paul, and then Mickey.
Great question, Jan. Auto Sleep is a great app on the iPhone. I use that. And also the Aura Ring is incredible. I think that hands down is the best sleep device. It's not an app, it's a hardware device. It runs for about 7 days, and it's incredible in the amount of data that it generates about your sleep.
And Paul, you're really low. Go ahead, Jason.
It's hard to understate how complicated the ML training involved in these kinds of things is. It's really just going to depend
you mean
upon
machine
sorry,
learning.
the machine learning training of how to tell. For example, your Apple Watch can tell when you're washing your hands. How do they do that? It is actually incredibly hard. So I mean, my answer is going to be whatever you find tracks you most accurately is pretty much going to be your winner.
Next question.
Moving on to another Jan Landy question. Actually, can someone explain to me what is Mukana, its origins, and how does someone get their own account?
So Mukana is not available yet. We're working on it. We do some, if people ping me, we can, possibly build it up for specific events, and we use it for specific events. It is a evolution of Q&A that I've been working on for about 12 years. So it's version 4 rewrite. And so, I believe that I had an opinion a long time ago that a lot of these events that I was working on would go a lot better if we had a better Q&A system, to do that, and had more tools. And so it's progressively built up, and, gotten to experiment with it on a lot of events in a lot of different scales. And it has a sister app that is called Commenda, which manages just comments from social networks. And so between the two, we've been able to play with a lot of things and get pushed up against a lot of problems that we've solved. And so we are planning to make it more available to folks. The problem is we built it for our own use. So it's got incredible tools on the back end for us to run events. It just doesn't have great administrative tools for other people to run their events. And so that's part that's on our list of things to sort out. It's just that it's a huge lift for us every time someone wants to use it, because so we have to build out an instance and do a bunch of other things. And so it's not like, oh, we can just give you a login. There's no way for you to create the event without Chris at the moment. And so that's the challenge at the moment. But we are planning to roll it out further, and it's capable of doing a lot more than what we use it for here. Go ahead, Jen.
So it's proprietary. So what is the origin of the word Mukana? How did you come up with Mukana?
Mukana is it's a Shona term. So it's a Shona term that is an auspicious, a couple different versions of it, but basically a good place to get something done. So it's an auspicious place to get something done. And it's also a Finnish word, oddly enough, that when I did searches for it, of a room to have a conversation, which I thought was very interesting that both of them applied well. So that's where the name came from. Commenda is just comments in Shona. I use Shona words a lot for product names because no one else does. so and I find Shona's my favorite language to listen to. I spend a lot of time working in Zimbabwe, and so I feel like it's a very musical language. So I enjoy words from the language because I just enjoy listening to it. So anyway, that's the origins of the name of Mukana. So yeah.
So now the people on YouTube, do they have access to this too, or is it only the panel? Because if they don't know what they're missing. It's so efficient and really well done. Compliments, Alex.
Thank you. Well, and thanks to what's interesting about it, because we have a full-time programmer working on it, and we have all these people using it every day, and the people who come here tend to be inquisitive and reasonable and not crazy. You get a lot of great comment. There's a Mukana channel inside of Discord, and so there's this Mukana has gotten much better over the last 6 months because people here are using it, and so people here go, oh, it'd be really good if I could do this and do this and do this, and so we've been able to develop it even further than it was already. I mean, it was already pretty well developed. It started, 5 years ago, this version. And it benefited from a bunch of early things because we were doing backends for Facebook events. And before Cambridge Analytica, we were able to have an enormous amount of data, coming from events, and before they ruined it all for everybody. So before Cambridge Analytica, we were able to just, push basically every live event on Facebook. I could just point Commenda at it and just pull all the comments out. And the advantage of that was we were able to stress test it. So it's very well stress tested, and it manages a lot of flow really effectively. Anyway, so we know it scales, and then it's just a matter of what you find really quickly is that the comment engines inside of YouTube and Facebook and everything else are just very rudimentary. It's very hard to manage a conversation effectively with the tools. Even Zoom's tools they're better because you have to separate comments from questions. As soon as you do that, you're 90% there. But the ability for us, I don't have to ask Zoom to add little features. I just ask Chris, and I usually have them in days. The limit to the speed at which Mukana goes is not the limit to the development. It's the limit to me having enough time to send Chris spec docs. And so I expect it to move pretty fast in the next couple months. So anyway, next question.
Felix LG Robillard of Montreal, Canada says, is it possible to do Zoom polls in a Zoom room?
I don't know. I don't know if you can do Zoom polls in a Zoom room. I don't think you can. I mean, a Zoom room can be part of a meeting that did polls, but I don't think you can do them from the Zoom itself. So, I don't know. Next question.
Is Tom whining? But actually, I think it's a reflection of what we talked about earlier. Did people think? What did people think about the halftime show, tech-wise and creative-wise? I thought it was not good, but I think we pretty much.
I don't think we talked about that. I think we covered that before the show. I think we talked a lot about it before the show. We didn't talk about it during the show. And I said if you bring it up, we'll talk about it again. And we've got plenty of time. By the way, if you want to ask questions, this is a good day because we're going 2 hours of questions for this Monday. It's probably the last Monday in a long time that we'll do that. And a reminder, by the way, that we are doing it again 2 hours tonight. We'll be doing it at 6 o'clock tonight again. So Mondays are now. And I did say that Mondays would always be 2 hours in the evening of just Q&A, but we already have people going, hey, I want to be on the show. Like I'll do the second hour, or I have somebody that'll do the second hour that wouldn't do it in the morning, and then I'll do it in the evening. So I think Mondays will get just as busy as everything else. Yeah, that's how it all begins. So anyway, so the question back to the board is, what did we think of the halftime show? Go ahead, Paul.
Yeah, it was terrible. It was just you couldn't understand the weekend. The audio levels were off. And by the way, is my audio level back now, Alex? Am I okay?
Yeah, you're back. You're hot.
Just terrible.
Yeah, it was arguably one of the worst ones I've seen in a decade. I think. Go ahead, Courtney.
Well, I was kind of amazed by the staging, how they got such a huge set that was, like 3 stories tall onto the field and off the field with it being invisible during the game. And the other thing is, I thought the wardrobe choices were very bad in the opening, where they had all the people in the buildings and stuff, the choir, I guess it was, lined up on either side of the 2 doors that divided. They were in black coats, and it was a mostly African-American chorus. And there was very little light on them. You couldn't see them at all. So
I think that was the point at the time. I mean, with the lights and stuff like that were what they were trying to do. But
they had sparkly coats, but you could just barely see the sparkles.
I would say the stage was probably less challenging than it normally is, just because they had less people to worry about, as far as viewability goes. And it was actually, I thought the stage was probably less adventurous than most stages have been for that. But that is like I talked to someone. We should bring someone on if we can get them to talk in public. But I've talked to folks who work on that halftime show, and it's just months and months and months of building and rehearsal, and using a demo stadium and figuring out how to get at first it's the creative, and then there's this huge chunk of it that's just the logistics of how to get the cables and the things out, and how many people are you going to need, and how are you going to build it all up, and how's it going to work, and then it's rehearsal after rehearsal after rehearsal, because they have like literally less than 30 seconds of time. And I guess the one that was worse is when they lost power. They did lose power in New Orleans, so that was worse than this one. Go ahead, Bill.
I was actually fine with most of it. I thought it was interesting staging in the Hall of Mirror, things behind stage, and we went through all the red coats there. The one time they totally lost me, though, was when they did the on-field phalanx of Weekends in the red coats. And I get the bandage thing from the music video and his persona and the rest of that, but I just looked at all those people with these semi-obscured faces dancing, and I just thought, that looks creepy. It just looked creepy to me. And I never escaped that feeling for the rest of the performance.
I mean, the one thing we talked about before the show that we'll repeat is that I've worked on concerts where they really spend a lot of time on the mix. We were talking about, and they run it through Pro Tools, and then they make sure that it's mixed. And during rehearsals, they tweak it all and they make sure it all goes out well. There was just no reason for the mic to be so bad for 3 songs. Like there's no good reason technically, for that to be so far off for so long. For it to be off for 30 seconds, absolutely. Even a minute, absolutely. As they figure it out, it's a little. The mic is a little mixed into the show. But making that tweak it's not a big tweak. It's one mic and a lot of background music. There's no other band, everything else is done. So, and Mickey will probably argue with me a little bit about it, but I'm just like, I don't get it at all. Go ahead, Jason, and then Mickey.
My understanding of the stage placement is that it wasn't actually on the stage. It was up in the risers, and you could tell because of where the where the stadium, it said, whatever his name stadium was. So no, it was actually up in the rafters, and that's, it was probably there, and they just uncovered it.
It could have been. I mean, when you only have 25,000 people in a big stadium, it makes the life a lot easier to design this kind of stuff. Go ahead, Mickey, and then we'll go to Michael.
Yeah, I mean, in terms of the vocals, I watched it earlier during the pre-show. The guys mixing these shows, they're competent people, and
They are. I don't.
vocals will be on like their master layer on a VCA or a DCA, whatever
Well,
they
this is
call it.
I know that the Super Bowl has two audio and two mix. They have a board just for broadcast. It doesn't.
Yeah,
It's not going.
definitely.
It's,
Yeah, they're
so
gonna have
and a person
multiple
managing.
trucks.
So I don't understand how it's so far off. All of us noticed it though.
Yeah, well, I'm curious if that is an artist's decision or maybe
Wow.
a management decision of the artist, or
That would be the weirdest artistic decision ever.
And we've run into clients like that. They make decisions, creative decisions that don't make sense.
You're right.
To
You're
a
right.
lot of people.
It could be that
because those engineers are competent. They know how to mix.
Maybe he just didn't feel like he was in good voice and said, "Bring me down a little bit." You never know.
I know that they're very competent. They're very good at what they do. That's definitely not. I just don't understand like what happened. Like it is. And to your point though, if it's a creative decision, maybe that's it. And then that was a horrible creative decision because it was mud. Like it was like literally the worst mix I've heard in a long time on a broadcast. Like it and so whoever made that decision should never get to make that decision again. I mean, I do know that they could have fixed it. I just don't understand what happened. Go ahead, Michael, and then Courtney.
Which Michael? There's two of us.
No, I'm here.
Oh, sorry, Rogers.
Yeah, in reference to Courtney and Jason, that there's a huge deck where the pirate ship is located. I've worked in that stadium hundreds of shows, and there's a huge deck there, probably 60 feet from front to back. And that's where that entire set was built, with the mirror room and all of that in it, and all the risers in front. And then to get the weekend down to the actual field, they had to bring him down 3 floors on an elevator that was located in the corner of the stadium. And so that's why there was a gap between his appearance in the mirror room and his appearance on the field. But that's the end of the stadium where the sound booth is also located, right across from the pirate ship. And at the opposite end, you'd see the same mezzanine deck where the ESPN and the broadcasters were. And they were set up on about a 60-foot wide deck. And on the backside of that deck is normally concessions. So they were all closed because they didn't have the people for them. They used the club concessions instead.
Right. Courtney?
Great clarification. Thanks for that. One thing I was thinking, Alex, because a lot of times I hear stuff on my broadcast, on my TV and my 2.1, stereo that sound, it's like I can't hear the dialogue, the music, and the effects. Or I was wondering if it could be an encoding problem, that the guys in the stadium heard it fine, and somewhere it was going out to broadcast, and something was getting inverted, and somewhere there was a channel inverted in the encoding, and it caused the center channel to drop, which happens frequently.
It's possible because, man, wow, it was really off. Go ahead, Michael Fraley.
Yeah, Courtney just basically stated the same. I was going to say, was this just a product of bad 5.1 management?
Watch your center channel phase.
Yeah. So I mean, maybe that was it, because it was just horrible. And then the only other thing that we as people who watch TikTok, my family was waiting for him at the end to do the dance that we all are accustomed to. Like, having all those people do the dance would have been a moment, that all people who watch TikTok would have recognized. And I get that artists don't want to admit that their songs are popular because of TikTok. So I think that's every time you talk to artists, they only a handful of them will nod to TikTok on how big of a deal it is. And record companies are very self-conscious about it and everything else. And so, because they're terrified that that's going to be the only pipeline that you can promote on. So but when they finished, my son was like, that was the worst, biggest missed opportunity of the century. Like, to have him, like, everybody knows that dance that watches TikTok, and for him to skip over it and do a dance, but not that one, was just a missed opportunity to as a tip of the hat to this huge audience that is potentially the next generation of viewers. Just, if you're going to put someone in that none of us, I mean, other than 2 songs that were on TikTok, I don't know any of his other songs. So you have one generation that doesn't even know who he is. I mean, I didn't know the name of the artist I didn't know who The Weeknd was until Sunday afternoon. You know, like I didn't know who he was. And I only knew those 2 songs because of TikTok. And then you have this whole other audience that knows those songs really well. And they somehow were able to alienate both sides or not, or just ignore both sides. So they got some small little sliver of folks. And so that was not a great creative decision there. Next question.
Keenan Campbell in Princeton, Illinois says, we just signed up for StreamYard. I've been using this setup for mobile storm updates. My MacBook is mounted in the truck with a mic and a Brio. I see restream.io is now offering a similar system. What are the differences? Ruthless review of my feed link below, and then he has a link to it.
This is his feed. I'll throw it up if he wants the ruthless review. Here it is. It looks like skipping around. He's using some of the comments, which is pretty neat. So it looks like he's got a little inset there on the of his car, along with, I don't know how he's cutting to this.
So he's
other shot.
broadcasting live storm chasing. That's kind of cool.
Yeah. Let's see. So I'll skip forward a little bit.
That's working pretty well.
Yeah,
as far
if
as
that's
streaming
real
goes.
time live, that would be really useful for people trying to figure out whether they should go out and try to go to work. But if you had people out there, channel that, people out there doing live drives to get you actual real time road conditions.
Yeah, I
don't
just
know
hope
if-
he's not switching that while he's driving. But
Amen to
that looks
that.
really good. If that is live, then that looks great.
Oh, yeah, it depends on how much production you're trying to do. As far as I think Restream, I mean, not Restream, but I think StreamYard has more tools to add more production value than Restream does. I don't know about the Restream studio tools very well, so maybe it has more than I know of. Yeah, go ahead, Jen.
I use Restream, and they're adding stuff all of the time. It's really effective. I like it a lot, and it works perfectly. It works flawlessly.
I mean, I admit that if I was doing it, I would want all my I'm a hardware guy, so I would have an ATEM Mini in there, and I would figure out a way to use Arduinos or whatever, so that I had little switches that I could just push, that I could just tie in, that I could click to different views while I'm talking about it. And I would have it all in the hardware, and then I'd have just something encoding out, and probably a live view or something, but I would have, or a cellular in this case, but I don't know if I would try to do it in the cloud while I was driving, unless somebody else is managing it. Go ahead, Mickey.
Yeah, it would be cool to somehow add another stalk to the steering column and switch with that. But yeah, he mentions it's mounted in the truck with a mic and Brio. I'm curious how it sounds like. I don't know if you're set up to pump the audio, guy.
Yeah, go ahead.
Well, it's going to be
Courtney.
cab sound, right? So you'll get a little outside, but mostly him talking.
I do think that
Jerry, the last
pulling the
I heard,
comments in
the
are cool.
county plows were going to come in due to whiteout conditions. I
You hearing
haven't
the audio
heard.
now?
They were going to regroup and see. If they can't see the plow, I don't know what they're going to do. I would
Also, he's
recommend you
answering
download the
questions
Ready
live.
Bureau app. It has the IDOT road conditions map
doing
in it,
live
and that's
commentary.
updated in real time to show you what the main roads are.
It's cool.
That's
Yeah.
pretty
I think
cool.
it's a cool approach.
That's
Yeah,
the best I
cool
can
approach.
offer you
I
right
think he
now.
should-
I
he
don't know what
should
the city
mount a-
plows or any of the other municipalities are going to do, but if they can't see, I don't know how they're going to plow.
Should mount a stereo bar outside and get some nice, natural wind ambience and get all that.
But I think there
atmosphere
might
in
be a
there.
local business model there, and in those kind of communities that have to suffer lots of snowstorms, I can see that being really useful.
Yeah, go ahead, Courtney.
Is he rolling in the lower thirds and the
While driving?
VFX stuff, or is he just transmitting the stuff from the MacBook and the mobile unit, or is he
I'm curious,
pre-taping
yeah,
it and then sending it back to a studio where somebody is assembling that for streaming?
Keenan,
I don't know.
Keenan, I mean, depending on how much you want to talk about, it'd be fun to have you come on and talk about what you're doing there, because
Yeah, I
I'm
think
pretty
this is
fascinated by the whole thing. Like how the pipe, how many people are involved? Are you trying to? Don't come on if you're trying to cut this all from your car, because people will be upset with you. They'll be, but if there's other team members that are doing that for you, then you should come on and tell us about it, because I'm very interested in the pipeline of how to do that. Go ahead, Mickey, and then Roscoe.
Yeah, Keenan says in the chat that he's in. He'll jump in and discuss.
If you raise your hand, Keenan, we'll have you on. I like even right now just to talk about it because we're very curious.
I wonder if you
how
could
this
take
whole
one of
thing
those
works.
cars that has AC controls on the steering wheel and map that to camera switching, just so you can keep your hands on the wheel, keep your eyes on the road, and switch.
We don't let people in normally in the second, just randomly, but this one is fascinating.
This is awesome.
Yeah, I'm very interested. Go ahead, Mickey.
Yeah, just a reminder, Keenan, just be careful with leaving your gear in there, and hopefully you live in a safe place and people don't break into cars, because it happens a lot.
Okay, so I'm on my portal. I don't know if you guys can even hear me. I don't have anything. You can. Okay, good. My mic might be crap. I'm sorry. This is such a spur of the moment.
No, that's fine. That's fine. Just hop on. Tell us. So what's the pipeline here? Just let us know how this all works.
All right. So StreamYard is the software. I have my MacBook Pro in my county Tahoe, which has a FirstNet LTE connection already. So I already have good internet in the truck. Brio mounted underneath my warning lights it's just Velcroed. And then I have an XLR lapel mic to get better audio than rather hear because the MacBook audio is terrible.
Yep.
So we do that, and this is all live, and I'm literally one-handed. Just StreamYard has all the titling built into it, so that's all pre-built before I drive, and it's almost just a one-click. So if somebody comments,
how do you know that someone commented?
So StreamYard has all the comments show up in the interface, and I just click on it. It does all the processing to put the title, their picture, everything. So it's been pretty cool. And I'm the director of EMA, and I've been in office hours for a while with you guys, but I work for a county government. So this is a whole new use case. People don't believe what we're telling them. So now I show them. The beauty of StreamYard.
That's awesome, man. Great job.
The snow is really bad.
And it's literally just a Brio and USB-C to my MacBook, and then the XLR mic. So everything's ran on the MacBook. I do have ATEM Mini and an ATEM Mini Pro and a Blackmagic 6K, but for the headroom inside the county Tahoe, I don't have all the room to put all that gear. So and this is just right on the edge of town, and the problem I have with the Brio is it actually makes the video look better. The conditions look better than it actually is. My eyes are, and I tell people that. I'm like, guys, the camera's better than my eyes are. So we don't leave town, but the beauty of StreamYard, I have all my other employees that I'm going to put an iPad on their dash, and I can bring them into this feed also remotely. It's worked well, but then Restream came out with the same thing, and I'm like, it's kind of doing the same workflow, but you can see. So this Travis guy posted that. All I did was click on his comment, and it automatically puts it on the screen. So it's really a one-click cut back and forth, but I'm one guy. I'm doing all this by myself.
How are you rolling in the weather radar and that like is a screen share?
So that's a screen share with Radar Scope in StreamYard. So I have my video is the dash cam or the Brio, and then I'm screen sharing the Radar Scope app on my MacBook as a full window, and I have it set up to split screen. It's all built into StreamYard. It's been incredible, and people have just went nuts over it.
Yeah.
So these are citizens that are actually commenting while I'm live.
Yeah.
So the engagement's been just phenomenal, and now people are telling me, "Hey, when are you going to do a Facebook Live road check?" So now our county is 900 square miles. So I obviously can't drive the entire county.
Here's the reason that people always ask like why I move so slowly to add things to office hours is because of inflation of expectations. You add a bunch of things, you have to be careful of how you're going to manage them. Like I can add a lot of things, but can I do them over and over and over again? Yeah. So you're getting into that challenge of, when you do something great, then people are like, when do I get to, that's fascinating.
Well, and the beauty of this is it was just kind of a proof of concept that I thought, okay, let me try it in my Tahoe. And then my volunteers are all issued 4G LTE FirstNet iPads. So I can bring them into StreamYard and cut to their video. So I could actually be in more places. The idea eventually is that somebody's going to produce this and I don't have to do it from my car. I'm going to put a bunch of cameras out, but you can see I'm just cruising. I'm not really touching the laptop while I'm driving because the cut is simply just reach over, and then I took your advice, long tail. I had to have the 30 to, I never did that before. So I created this graphic with our app, and I made a long tail, because that was something I never did. And so thanks for that. I mean, and then this group has been instrumental in a lot of these things. As an emergency manager, I've always been a techie guy, but I mean, you guys have really just helped us up our game.
That's awesome. It's great.
You're killing it. You're killing it.
Great work. Great work.
And that's such a service for the people of your area to know in real time what the conditions are out there. I mean, that might theoretically stop somebody from going out who shouldn't be, because they didn't realize how bad it was. Yeah.
It certainly does. I know there are
saving
people
lives
that,
out there.
We actually did it at noon that day and told them by 4 o'clock, this is going to be bad. If you don't have your groceries by 4 o'clock, don't go. And this was my 4 o'clock update that Guy is showing, and the forecast verified. So then it gives us a chance to give kudos to the National Weather Service and all those guys that get beat up all the time.
Right.
So, I mean, it really...
You know what you need to do is, when it's raining really hard, you need to go to somewhere that the road is washed out and push a car into what looks like just water going across the road, so that the people can see what happens. Like I almost drove through a washed out. You know, it just looked like there was a little water across the top of the road, and I didn't go through it because I know better. Like, I grew up in a country, and I was like, I'm not going to go through that. Truck went through past me and almost was submerged, and my little BMW would have just disappeared.
First thing we learned in Arizona is the meaning of flash floods, and exactly. Cross this.
Anyway, so real quick, Roscoe, then Jason, then John.
Are you getting inquiries from other agencies that are trying to duplicate this at all at this time?
Yeah.
Okay.
We definitely, people are like, how are you producing this? How many people are on your production team? And I put my hand up and say, hey, it's me, just me.
By the way, just for our group, in the world of, there's opportunity around us all the time. Like, I just want to kind of outline, I say this every once in a while, but there's an opportunity right now to take what is being, what's being done here, what Keenan's doing, and make it a service. Like, hey, I've got a bunch of little hardware you can put in your car, and you can do it, and we'll manage it for you, and we'll set it all up and get it so that you can run it yourself. And it costs a little bit of money to do that. And while Keenan can do it on his own, there's going to be a lot of counties that would love to do this, that need help to put it together. And this is probably a multi-million-dollar business, of just giving, you taking what Keenan has done and, systematizing it and building, because you could make it less expensive, more, and that you tie them all in so that everybody's got cameras coming back to it. If, that there could be a supersized version, which it sounds like where a Keenan's going, of, there's a central location that is feeding all those feeds back, and then you're cutting between them all, or maybe that central location is the cloud, and you're basically cutting between them all. But then if you think about counties organizing together, you now have a camera system that could be global, or national, of being able to jump to different things from all these different areas, and people could kind of subscribe to it. There's a big business here, because it's really compelling, Keenan. That's why I brought you on. I don't usually do this, but I was like, oh, I need to see how he's doing this. This is really interesting. Yeah, go ahead.
And I will say, I mean, it goes back to you guys, because you talk about the kit model. You're right. This could be something where counties get sent a kit for X many vehicles, and then somebody runs the production from StreamYard or Restream or something like that. I'm the director, so I'm the boss here, but and my guys work for me. But it was something that I thought, it's super simple. But I've done live videos with the iPad mounted on the dash. The cameras, it's okay. I really wanted to put my 6K on the dash, and then I thought, that might be a little more challenge. Let's try the Brio, because everybody raves the Brio, and the audio is a big thing. So I made sure to have the XLR lapel mic, and I clip it right here, and I'm driving in the car, and that's it. So people have just went gaga over it. And
by the way, the mic that I would experiment with if I were you, I mean, that sounds pretty good as it is, but there's a mic called the Boom. It's called the Boom mic, and it's the same company that builds them for Apache helicopters, and they're up in Santa Rosa. They're not very far from here. I used it when I used to have a convertible, and I'd have the convertible top down talking, and people thought I was in the office. Like, it's when you're looking for a headset mic that just makes everything go away. It's an amazing piece of hardware. But your audio sounds pretty good. It's a little stark a little bit at times, which is going to be something when you're talking loud in but so that'd be the thing. But the production value is just great, and the fact that you're doing it all there. The only thing I worry about is safety of having to do a couple things while you're driving in the snow. Just don't.
Well, and a lot of it is
McDonald's.
So I definitely will. So I'll reach over. My MacBook is right there on my console, and a lot of times I'll do the switching when I'm stopped. So it's really boring when I'm stopped and the camera's not moving. People don't like that. So I'll switch to radar, and it's just basically one click back and forth. Well, we talked about doing the little stream deck in my Tahoe where I could have it on my steering wheel.
Well, I think that you could build, the other thing to know is that you could build ergonomics. So this is where things like X keys comes in really. X keys on a low end and Arduino at a higher end comes in, because what we've done is we build, like what I would do if I was going to turn this into a service would be building keys that are attached to the steering wheel that are the three things that I want to do. And I don't have to look over or do anything else. I just pop it, and it goes to the next thing or whatever. Those are things that could be built without a lot of, when I say built, it's like a weekend of work, for someone who understands how to 3D print and understands Arduino language. So I think that those are, or Node-RED, which I didn't know existed until this weekend, and I'm coming up to speed very fast. Anyway, so like this is the place where someone could systematize it, where they build kind of an ergonomic system that gives you everything that you want to do, and have it all just be something that someone could just send to you, and you're very technically aware, but I'm sure a lot of other county folks that are probably not quite as far along as you are media wise, and so being able to just give them an out of the box experience that lets them, just throw this into their, rig this into their truck or their car or whatever would be, I think, a really compelling solution. Anyway, great work. That's all.
Thank you.
Mickey and then Jason. Did you have something, Mickey? All right.
No, sorry.
My window rearranged, so I don't know who was who. Jason and then John.
Yeah, I absolutely love this. One thing that I would add is you've got this huge black hood right on the Yukon, and that is perfect real estate to basically convey anything that you want. If you've got a local state, you got a local bond, you need to sponsor this. Like, all you have to do is get vinyl cutout with magnetics, and you've got perfect coverage.
That's funny. You could camera map it. Anyway, go ahead, John. And then Jan.
Would you be available to do a consulting for the California State Parks?
Of course, that's what this group is all about. You guys consult for me all the time. I'm not the video pro, but we had our production
that was up in the mountains, and we canceled it because of snow. I'm going to show them this and say, hey, we could have done it, but no, this is amazing. And actually, we're working on some professional development scheduling. So I assume you're in Discord.
I am.
Yeah.
And if we did an event for the state parks, could we play it back here, like a second hour for
I would love to.
Okay, let's do. This is nothing short of amazing.
Yeah.
Well, and the biggest thing that I take away from this is you guys are the experts in my eyes, yet I'm still welcome into the Mukana and the Discord, and it built my county up because of your thousands of years of experience.
Well,
so,
but this is the perfect example of the fact that we're doing something here. People are learning, but now you're bringing it back. You're inspiring a bunch of people to think about it, and you're bringing it back into the group. And this is how we all get better together, is that you've done something that none of us thought of. Like none of us thought of how to do this. We have our own little areas that we know, and you've done something incredibly creative. And I'm so excited that we were able to have any kind of contribution to what you're doing. But what I really appreciate is that you came back and showed us, and we get to show it to everybody else. And now this knowledge is going to go back into the system, and it may end up in a whole bunch of counties because you showed it off. And they're probably all going to come. You'll probably get a lot of emails in the next little bit of time. But
okay.
Anyway,
Absolutely.
Really well done. Yeah, really
Thank
well
you.
done. Yeah, Jan.
Yeah, two things. One, the camera seems pretty stable. How are you doing that? And two is, how many feeds do you get into StreamYard?
So right now it's just the Brio is mounted under, I have red and blue warning lights, and what I'm going to do, Alex, I'll take some pictures of the setup in my car and I'll post it to Discord. But the Brio is literally Velcroed to the bottom of my warning light. So in the car, it's the red and blue lights, and then it's right there. So it's pretty stable based. And I was worried that it was going to bounce, but it's just a Brio 4K. The USB cable wraps around to the MacBook that's mounted on my console. And then as far as other streamers, I think I can have 10 in StreamYard. I bought the middle of the road account, not the free one, not the pro, just the middle. I think it's 8 or 10 inputs, and it's phenomenal how to add people to the stream. It's kind of like Zoom. You basically just throw them up, check their audio, put them in. So that'll be the next rendition of this, is having multiple cameras in different parts of our county. And then I did pay for templating in Photoshop, or a Photoshop template for StreamYard. So they have now companies that have built off of StreamYard. So that's where the Bureau County graphics and our EMA graphics, those are a Photoshop template that are already pre-keyed where those windows will be. So that's helped us add a little professionalism. I guess I could have drawn it from scratch, but it was easier. So all of those graphics are pre-built. I'm not doing that while I'm driving. They're all pre-built, preloaded. The other neat thing is in a cellular depressed area, StreamYard servers are handling all this. So all I have to do is get the video and the audio to StreamYard. They're pushing it out to Facebook, YouTube, and everywhere else. So even some of these mobile applications, I'm just on the Wi-Fi built into my Tahoe.
Right.
So,
Well, and where one of the things we've done, when especially with a lot of people on the at what we call on the edge, which is where you're at, you know, you're broadcasting in, as you grow it, if you have a studio somewhere that's going into StreamYard, that becomes your stable hub, you know, that you can always go back to. So if a connection, your connection hasn't broken up, but if the connection falls apart, you can always go back to someone else that's going to talk for a little while people are, you know, doing whatever they're doing. And so it's really
that was the advantage for us with StreamYard, because I'm taking the head end out of the car, where I could do the ATEM and send it and encode it there. With this, the other neat thing is StreamYard does branding. So if I'm doing it for Bureau County, I can brand it EMA, I could brand it office hours, and it's all pre-built. I just select a different brand, and now I'm a new brand and a new destination. So it's been pretty cool. It's $240 a year for StreamYard.
I'm going to cut off the conversation right now, but we're going to get you in for a second hour. So take pictures. We're going to do a whole second hour in the next couple of weeks. So before the weather clears up, I want to talk about how you're using it. So please take pictures and think about it a little bit. We're going to bring you back if you're willing. We'll bring you back on.
Absolutely.
And have you come on and do a breakdown. And if other people are using what we're fiddling with and doing great things with it, like what Keenan's doing, definitely let us know, because we'd love to bring people in and do kind of, you know, overviews of how people are using this. But just stunningly interesting, you know, of what you've done there. So great work.
Thanks.
And thanks for jumping right on. And we'll, but next week or two, we'll try to get you on, but go take photos, and then maybe not next week, but the week after, give you a little time to think about it. But let's have you, you know, come on and really show the whole workflow.
Okay.
All right. Thanks, Keenan.
Yep.
All right, let's go to the next question.
Way cool.
I got to say, I'm really impressed with the roads where he is. I mean, my roads out here, I'd be bumping up and down, man.
Yeah.
I got to move to his county. That's all there is to it.
Well done.
All right. Jan Landy has the next question from Las Vegas. I have information on how to apply the version Big Concert for Small Business grants that were revealed last night after the Super Bowl. A grant never to be repaid. They range in amount from $5,000 to $20,000. Where's the best place to put the link?
I don't know. What can you tell us more about it, Jan?
Talking about the Verizon.
Yes,
Verizon,
that's correct.
not Verizon.
Yeah, the Verizon. So they announced it, and it's over tomorrow. So you have to do it right now. So if you have a small business, Verizon is committing $10 million to provide grants to small businesses through LISCA. So there's a link. I already put it in Mukana. I just came in over the wire right now. So if you guys are a small business and you need some money, they're making it so that you can get a grant from Verizon, which you don't have to pay back. And I believe it's between $2,000 and $5,000. Is that right, Jason?
Or you said 5 to 20 here, but I don't. But
5 to 20, is that what I said? Yeah, then that's what it is. But you got to apply by tomorrow. So I put the link in Mukana so somebody can take it and put it wherever they want.
Good, Roscoe.
Yeah, drop the link again so it's closer to the question, if you would.
Yeah, if you could drop it in again, that'd be great. And just in Mukana, that'd be great. Next question.
Michael Weber, I believe Foxborough, Mass. I might be wrong about the state. What is the best way to increase Zoom video quality to 1920 by 1080? I'm prepared to purchase Zoom rooms. Do I need to purchase hardware or simply have the subscription? And are there other ways of doing this?
Generally, you need to be a business user to get even in the door. Like, you know, you have to have enough accounts that you're paying real money. not just a simple pro account or whatever. So no one's going to listen to you if you have a simple pro account, I don't think. But if you have more of more Zoom rooms or multiple, like we have a business account, so we're paying for X number of users, then you're now can start making requests, and then you have to make the request inside of support. There's no automatic way to get 1080p. Go ahead, Jason.
I mean, it's exactly what you think it is. You need just what Alex said, and you have to ask, and you have to be nice, and most importantly, you have to have a good reason to do it. How is Zoom benefiting from this? Tell them how.
Right.
That'd be your best
high
shot.
high profile kind of events are what they're typically looking for there. Next, and note that it's a different request for webinar versus meeting. So you have to request both of those, and I wouldn't try to do it both at the same time. Next question.
Thomas from Steinhagen, Germany says, is there a chance to do a second or third hour on setting up vMix in AWS?
Yeah, absolutely. Just put it into the second hour suggestions inside of Discord, and we'll take it into account. We're starting that very basic conversation this Friday. And then I think we're trying to get the folks from AWS in every month. We're going to have them start coming in once a month just to be able, some of their engineers to be able to answer questions. But we also have folks like Tucker and Guy and Jeff and other people that we're going to, pull in. The first one this Friday is super simple. It's literally just how to stream to, how to stream to AWS and how to stream it somewhere else. It's a really hello world kind of thing. But I'm going to be working with the folks here that are already doing heavy experimentation to make sure that they're available for those second hours, and then add AWS engineers and so on and so forth to kind of talk through those things. Guy.
I have to give kudos to our partners at the National Weather Service.
Oh, sorry.
These guys that they're working remote.
Your audio is still coming in from that stream there, Guy.
How about now?
No, go ahead. Yeah, that's good.
Yeah. So yesterday during the post show, a couple of us were still in there during the Super Bowl. So I was like, well, let's fire up vMix in the cloud and let's take a couple contributions. So Tony came in. Frank in Canada was cutting, so I gave him the back end web browser. So we had Tony's feed coming in. AV Trainer actually opened up his camera of where he was at, and Frank was bringing up lower thirds and cutting the show from Canada, but we were in Seattle, Atlanta, or I think Tony's in Georgia, and then AV was in DC. So it was pretty cool to see it, and it was snappy, like real time with vMix call. So we had 3 vMix call contributions, but it would be cool to see high quality SRT coming in and then somebody cutting. But yeah,
and we're definitely going to start doing. I want to start using vMix and a couple other things in the cloud as an experimentation for even office hours. Maybe not the main ones immediately, but to start figuring it out where we start building out the production team in the cloud and really having the show being generated by that way. And so it's just going to take a little bit of time to get that working. But in the next couple of months, the idea is we should have 15 people, all over the world running the show every morning, and having it appear everywhere and go everywhere. And it allows us to get our head around how it works. It gives us a place where we can show everybody what we're doing all the time, because it's ours, right? So if we're doing it, we can just be pulling it open, once a week. We just pull open what we're doing and how the comms are working and how the thing's working, and use it as a way to educate everybody. So it'll start off with something that's not part of the main feed. It'll be Saturday afternoons, or we'll take tests and so on and so forth. But my goal is to get it to a point where we're using it every day, all day. And that's a mixture of the Unity comms and the cutting in the cloud and everything else. So we're going to be moving through that this year to keep going. But to start, we'll do some AWS stuff to get people. I admit that I just don't know the Google and Azure stuff well enough to go down the path. And I don't know anybody I know very few people that are using those for these solutions. And so that's why we're going to focus on AWS. Next question.
Laura Seal from Greensboro, our friend, says, for a vMix machine, is 2.3 gigahertz processor enough, or will I wish I'd gone with the 3 gigahertz?
I think it depends on what you're doing. I think that with all of the software cutters, it depends. With all the software editing tools, they at their base, when you're cutting a couple feeds, they don't need that much. They're pretty light, especially vMix. vMix is particularly light as far as code goes. The hard part, the tricky part of all software editing tools is that they scale up in, that they can ask the computer to do more than the computer can do. And so when you have a little computer, it starts working. You just have to pay a lot of attention to CPU usage, because as you start adding graphics and more feeds and more other things, it's going to start, as you start streaming and as you start doing other things, all of those take resources, and you will hit, a smaller computer will hit the limit of those resources faster than a big computer. And when you buy something that's all hardware, it's one thing because it just works. When you buy something that is software, then you need to be very conscious and technical about what the requirements are. Yeah, go ahead, Mickey, and then Courtney, and then we'll move on.
Yeah, I think one question though, like I know vMix utilizes GPUs a lot, but does anyone know what processes in vMix take up more of CPU cycles than GPU cycles? Like, is NDI GPU heavy or CPU heavy, or
Yeah, I don't know about NDI.
I think it just depends on how the block is written.
Yeah, I mean, it can be either one, and sometimes it can fade to either one. Just use one or the other depending on what's available. Generally, graphics so scaling tends to be a GPU operation. So scaling audio or video or even stills, not audio, but video or stills tends to be as a GPU operation. Audio can be a GPU operation, but tends to be a CPU operation. Graphics compositing tends to be a GPU operation. So that's what they tend to be, but it depends on. And then if you're writing on a Mac, if you're writing to metal, it doesn't matter. Like you just write to metal and you tell it to do what you want it to do. And the Mac architecture, the Apple architecture figures it out, which is now, especially with the M1s, more important. Go ahead, Courtney.
Yeah, on their system requirements page, they say they're using a DirectX 10 as the minimum, and they recommend a GeForce NVIDIA cards for their GPUs, and an i7. Minimum is a 4-core, and then best would be an i7.
Yeah, you'll see a lot of folks. It's very rare for someone to require ATI or not ATI, but AMD, and it's common for them to require NVIDIA. And the reason is the way that NVIDIA manages data in the memory is much more efficient for production use than. So the AMD cards actually manage for games. The way games were written, at least a decade ago, AMD had an edge there. But for dealing with large amounts of data, the NVIDIA was much more efficient in how it handled it. It's something we dealt with all the time with Conduit, which is one of our softwares that it ran horribly on ATI boards at the time, now AMD, and ran great on NVIDIA. And because of that, and so you'll see, I would definitely try to get an NVIDIA card if you can, to make that work. I think Apple just went to the point where they just aren't using graphics boards anymore. Like that's where they're going instead of going back to NVIDIA. But the AMD ones are kind of a mess. Next question.
Laura Seal actually has kind of a follow-on. She's looking for recommended manufacturers and online retailers for high-spec Windows laptops. Who do we trust?
Go Jeremy and then Jason.
So we've had some pretty good success with the Razer Blade Pro line. They've got the sort of good generalist CPU, GPU, color accuracy, and a strong body from those of us who had Macs on set for things. The one caveat I will say with that is if it's the Pro and it has a discrete GPU, then, and this is true of MSI or any thing that has its own GPU, there will be a very large fan component underneath the computer, which means that you'll have heat issues if you are using it on your lap, but also a bit of flex. It's a bit of instability, again, if you're used to a sort of unibody laptop experience, but good, reliable and consistent brand.
That's great. Jason and then Mickey.
Yeah, absolutely to what Jeremy said. And the reason for that flex and for that, unexpected fan noise is because it's, unlike a Mac, they spec this one body with all sorts of different components in it. As far as my recommendation, I would say a high-end ThinkPad is one of the very best. A Lenovo ThinkPad is, in my opinion, the best portable PC on the market.
Go ahead, Mickey.
Yeah, from a lot of articles that I read and also people that I know who are not necessarily doing live streaming, but a lot of media production on Windows machines. A lot of them use Asus machines and Acer ones as well. And I believe, who makes Iris? Iris? Which company produced that?
Not sure.
I think it's Gigabyte, probably. I think.
Yep. You go ahead, Courtney, and then we'll move on.
Yeah, the Alienware line, which was purchased by Dell, they make some laptops, that are for gamers, and any of those would probably work pretty well for you in media streaming. I mean, in your application.
Next question.
Moving on, Chris Widener, Lafayette, doesn't say whether it's Louisiana or Indiana. Has anyone on the panel seen Obvio, I guess, or what integrated platform besides a complete custom would you recommend to blend live streams and Zoom breakout rooms?
Yeah, so that is Blue and Grant. And what we should do is someone just remind me by putting the second hour, but I'll reach out to them and get them to come in for a second hour. It'd be good to have them describe it. They're part of the family. So rather than us trying to describe it, I think it'd be better to bring them on and just give them a second hour. So we'll do that soon. If Grant was on right now, I'd have him kick it in. If you ask that question tonight, as a reminder, we are doing another one of these tonight at 6. If you ask that tonight, we can ask Grant directly because he's usually coming in on the Monday evening sessions. Next question.
Hasmuk, our friend from Cape Town, says, fatigued taking audio chain from office to home, what lesser priced option in place of Mixpre-3 should I consider? So he's looking for a small portable mixer.
Jason?
Oh, a small portable mixer. I read that differently. I like the Zoom H6, or you can always just, basically any outboard sound card is actually its own mixer if you know how to address it correctly. So that this is a low-end Scarlett. As long as you've got a few in and a few out, it's going to be much more stable.
If you're not going to get a Mixpre yet, I think waiting till the middle of the year would be amazing. So anyway, Mickey. So I mean, there's a lot of technology being. We're in the middle of a lot of tech stuff that's happening, and a lot of people are innovating. I wouldn't buy it before something came out that was just perfect for what you needed.
That's where somebody should pop up a bubble that says, that's a hint.
Mickey?
Yeah, I think we need to remember that the Mixpre line is primarily a location sound mixer and recorder. So
we use it for something that it wasn't ever designed for, and it's so great for what we do for it, but it is way overkill for what we use it for. Yeah.
But yeah, if Hasmuk, if you only need to get audio in and out of a computer and you don't need the location tools like being able to work standalone, not needing a computer, being able to record in the box, then if that would just be an interface. And earlier, Jason showed a Scarlett, and which Alex isn't a fan of, but for me it works.
I've just had a lot of pain with the Scarletts, and the big thing is that so where we see to go back to my comment, where we see a lot of innovation is in the late spring and early summer for the fall school year. And so there is if you're going to wait, the time that a lot of components, whether they're video or audio, come out, NAB is one piece of that. That's where we used to see those announced. But where a lot of them come out is by the end of July, is there's a huge press and there'll be an unusually high press this year, because there's a lot of opportunity right now for people to continue to go down the path that we're going down. Jan?
Yes, Solid State Logic came out with a new 2-channel interface called the SL2. So if you do SSL, SL2, it'll come up in a search. And that is, that they took the preamp channels from one of their, $100,000 recording consoles, and it is as clean as can be for this. Also, if you're looking for something with faders and mixers, and I love the Zoom products. I happen to have the L-Track L8, and that is really, really good, especially if you want to mix in other people as well, and music. So if you have a small little music studio, the Zoom L-Track series, really, really good and inexpensive.
I always find it funny how almost impossible it is to find USB IIs that you can buy online. It's just like I went to look on eBay. I was like, I wonder if anyone's selling used USB IIs, because those are great interfaces, but Nobody gives them up. Like nobody gives up your USB Pre-2s.
I want to say one more thing. In my industry, which is the live concert touring industry, all of the manufacturers, every one of them have made a big rush to get into the streaming thing at home streaming, making USB products, which they've never made before. I mean, for example, there's a company called Earthworks Mics, and they are known for their reference mics. They now have a USB home mic. So everybody's jumping into it.
Yep. Next question.
Eddie Martinez of Sacramento, California. Wonder what the value of this effort would be during good weather. Oh, looks like he's probably referencing back to the snowstorm stuff we just watched. How can you flip the value? Would the curious tune in regardless?
Tornadoes, spring storms. I mean, that's how you flip it.
You may not use it as much in certain parts, but especially outside of California, there's actually a lot of weather. Like in California, we're not used to a ton of weather. We get fires. So there's that. But I think that there's a lot of opportunity there about anything, and there's a bunch of business models. Mickey,
I can probably utilize it to say maybe as a way to promote tourism. Maybe put it in some boat in a nice tropical country and show off the scenery.
When I was in there was one year when I was in Rwanda, right before South by Southwest. I don't remember what year it was, and all I did is I had a Toyota Land Cruiser, and I was driving around Kigali, Rwanda, with a phone suction cup to my front window, and it was going to Meerkat, and I was just answering questions. I would just see questions going up, and I got to stoplights. I would look over and just answer questions, and there was no graphics, no nothing, just me responding on Meerkat Live. And I was for a moment, I was the 9th or 10th most followed person on Meerkat, just because I was just showing traffic somewhere in the world that was interesting. Like you'd never seen what Kigali looked at, and I was hundreds, and sometimes I think I had low thousands of viewers concurrent on Meerkat at the time. And then South by Southwest showed up, and suddenly all these stars were using it, and I dropped off. But it was before, when it was just starting. You can get a lot of attention by doing something that is different. So if you live somewhere, part of the world that's different, it's an interesting opportunity. Go ahead, Roscoe.
Anything in the northern part of the United States, if there isn't weather, there is road construction.
Yes, exactly. The summer is just road construction. There's never good roads. There's just snowy roads and road construction. Welcome to our world.
You really mean road maintenance?
Yeah, but
yes.
Oftentimes it's construction because the roads just fall apart.
I've been on dirt in North
Texas.
Yeah. Next question.
Michael Weber of Foxborough, I'm assuming Massachusetts. I was not a big fan of the shallow depth of field during the Super Bowl. Felt very unnatural, artificial. The opposite of placing the viewer in the stadium. Do you think this technique will continue?
I do. I think that they do better with Super 35 sensor. I think the full size sensor is a little more than they need. A full size sensor, they went for it, right? And they wanted to show it off and make sure that you noticed it. I think that was the big thing, is that you don't want to do something that no one really noticed the difference. So you really notice the difference, but full frame sensor, fully wide open, is a really challenging way to shoot. And then they augmented that by the fact that I don't believe that they hired really good follow focus operators, because there was a lot of hunting. There's something that happens when you see someone who hasn't done a lot of follow focus, is they go the wrong direction. So they zoom out when they should zoom in, and they zoom in when they should zoom out. And that's something that a good follow focus operator gets really good at not doing, and really understanding and feeling the lens. And, Chris Summers, who's been here before, can talk to that more. But I don't feel like that. I feel like what they did is they got other camera operators that are already on the team to do the follow focus, rather than hiring a local 600 follow focus person who really knows how to do this, who's done this for the last decade. That's what they needed for something at the level of the Super Bowl, and they didn't do that, I don't believe. Jason.
I mean, not only was it bad, it was so bad that my girlfriend, who has never done production a moment in her life, noticed it and pointed it out. And I mean, I got the sense that they had guys, with phones. I mean, that's how crude it looked.
To their defense, the difficulty of doing a steady cam. So when you watch a movie and it's short depth of field and everything's in focus, it's because they rehearse that move over and over and over again. What a what you're doing when you're doing follow focus on a Steadicam in a live environment in a crowd is that the Steadicam operator is moving in and out and around, not in a choreographed way, just doing it. There's no marks to it. You have to sit there and feel it. And that's why you need, like, there's probably, I would say 20 or 30 people that are probably the right people to do that, to do that follow focus in the world, you know, to do it that well, because it's like, you know, shooting, you know, 1,000-yard shot from a boat, you know, is what it's, you know, what it's like to do that. Go ahead, Courtney.
At a SMT meeting many years ago, I saw a demonstration of a system which would have probably worked very well here, where they used an overhead witness camera in a sports stadium and programmed the follow focus. Basically, the follow focus guy would see the image, you know, would see the cameraman, and he would see what the cameraman's focusing on. He just touches what the cameraman's focusing on a touch screen, and it would automatically, you know, it's mapped out the stadium and knows the distances and automatically
you could
the focus to that particular spot. So that would be one way to do it. If they're looking at a monitor trying to figure it out and the subject matter's moving and the cameraman's moving, it's going to be a crapshoot.
If you had object tracking, if you mixed object track, autofocus, you know, object tracking along with, and using something like maybe that DJI stereo, you know, whatever, or LiDAR. So if you have, you know, we have been talking about doing autofocus with an iPhone because the LiDAR is so good. You know, you could just have, you know, enough with this imagery, you know, stuff, just use the LiDAR. But being able to tap on what you want and then have it maintain its relationship to the thing until the person taps on what the next thing that they want. You're right that that's probably a good solution. I mean, it would be a really, really powerful solution that, and again, what we're seeing is them experiment with it. It was just very quick clips, you know, in a big show. But they've been experimenting with it all year. I've been watching this progression of coming out of the end zones and being more and more aggressive about it. And that's how the NFL works. Like the little pylon cameras, those were around for over a decade, and they just kept on, you know, or not even a decade. I remember them talking about them. I remember talking to someone about it in 2000, where you know, are you going to be able to put cameras in so 20 years ago they were talking about them. They're talking about the fact that I guess the companies that built the first ones were all intelligence hardware manufacturers. So all those little cameras, like all these little micro cameras and everything else, all come from intelligence budgets that then, as they were allowed to propagate them, you know, they became a big deal. But that's where all of it came from. It was all paid for by the U.S. military or intelligence agencies, and then made more widely available. So. Anyway, so I remember having a conversation about that specifically, about where the cameras were coming from, and that eventually they'd be all over the field. And that was 20 years ago. They were experimenting, putting them in and not broadcasting them. They didn't broadcast the pylon cameras for a decade. Mickey?
Yeah, just going back to what do you call this, iPhones using iPhones for focus, that would be pretty interesting. Like use an iPhone dual purpose as a replacement for Cinetape, and also as a remote, as a controller for the follow focus motor.
Yeah.
And with the whole, you know, iPhone detecting people and eyes and all that, that would be a really
very interesting.
Someone needs to work on that.
Well, you know, because Apple has a lot of libraries that do that track whole bodies as well. So there's a lot of interesting opportunities there. Next question.
And Alex, I have to do radio at 9, so I'm going to have to dive out, but I'll get this one done. Has anyone used Mozilla's VPN, and how well did it work? It's from Michael Fraley of Dallas Fort Worth.
All right. Thanks, Bill. Jason?
I used an early beta and was not thoroughly impressed at first. My kind of tertiary understanding of it, since I've actually used the paid, and just so you guys know, I mean, he's not talking about DNS or DNS over HTTPS. Mozilla, to make money, has basically started this, you know, give us $5 and we will do your VPN. Is that it's gotten much better since my early beta test.
There you go. And our next question here is from Dirk Brewer from Guatemala. He said, in city-states where COVID-19 prevention is null, do you see a business case for virtual events, concerts, weddings, conferences, and note, how do you promote them? I see a business case for virtual events for forever at this point. I mean, I think that we've turned a corner where there's a different business model. There's a lot of money has been flowed into execution. I think that we're going to definitely see more and more of it. Because the money is now there, we'll see. I think we're going to see some, no matter what city or state it is, we're going to see they're going to go back to hybrid events and some physical events, but they'll keep on moving forward with virtual events, and virtual events will slowly take a larger and larger piece of the puzzle because the ROI is just much higher. Like when you do a virtual event well, the amount of money you put in, the money input to the money output ratio is very good. People just aren't doing them very well right now. And so at the bottom line is that when things are more efficient, they eventually win. That's generally how it works. And you can hold it for a little while, and people, event teams don't know how to deal with it, and ad agencies don't want to go back, and there's a whole bunch of other things that are there, but eventually it's going to, virtual events will win, 60 to 90% of the events that we do. Completely virtual events. Like, we won't do these other ones forever. But it might take a decade. The way to promote it, in my opinion, is to do it. Go find things that you can do stuff for. You got to learn how to do it, preferably without someone paying you that can be upset. Come on the panel here, be part of things, find people that you can support, try out events, try out things at home. And then, Keenan is a good example. Someone who threw something up, and if someone got adventurous, they could probably build a whole business model around that they could retire on, and then some. I mean, that's so there's tons of those kinds of opportunities. You have to look for but I think that going out to companies, and what you want to try to do is solve their problems now, so that they get their head around it, and you're the one that they knew. Once you get in, it's easier. But doing a lot of it, typically my model is do it for free, then do it for a little, and then keep on ratcheting up as you get better. Like that's how I do most things to get in the door. So next question is Barry Patterson from Woodland Park, Colorado. He says, are many here using Pro Tools for post or during the live stream? Go ahead, Mickey.
Yeah, I use Pro Tools for post-production on shows, and I have used it as well for live streams. And in terms of using it as a mixer / processor for live, it's been done for shows going all the way up to the Grammys. Like, they're running the live audio through Pro Tools and sending the mix out from that.
James Babbitt has the last question for today. When a meeting has Zoom rooms, how is having cameras on in a Zoom room better for security? Go ahead, Jason.
It's very simple. A camera equals accountability. It is very easy to put something up in place of a camera, and humans are extremely good at figuring out. If I were to put up a still frame of myself right now, it'd be really easy to figure that out. It just takes a moment to figure that out, and you kick somebody. So that's my answer. It's just accountability.
Go ahead, Roscoe.
Well, the names you can change too. So
yeah. I mean, I think that for us, what we found was having people have to actually interact with us. We were able to identify any troublemakers early on, and that's why also we had to have people's actual face on. We had one where someone came in and they were just shooting over their head just slightly, and then recommending things that were horrible. This is early on in our learning process here at Office Hours, and so that's actually the instance that caused us to require, I need to see your face, and I need you to do a mic check with us. The mic check is obviously there to help improve our audio, but it also is, we're identifying whether we think that you are here for this conversation or here to mess it up, and so we're making a qualitative decision while we're checking your mic. And when you say anybody can join, you have to have some way that you're going to, create a fence, there. And so, we've done it. We've kind of learned over time how to, create those fences, mostly from bad experiences. And that's also why I think it makes a difference for companies to do lots of events, because you learn and you build the pipeline that that made the most sense. Anyway, so I think we've reached the end of this one. Thank you all. Great questions. great. Thanks for Keenan for coming on. We're going to have him come on a little bit more. That was fantastic. So we'll have him come on in the next week or two and talk more about it. And thanks to the panelists for a lot of great conversation and great answers again, as always. Reminder that at 6 o'clock tonight, we're going to do this again. 2 hours with some of you. So our weekly 6 o'clock. I'm going to fix the date thing. I think it's broken right now. I think I made it every 8 weeks instead of 8 weeks straight. So I'll fix that. So you'll all get an email about that. Not just if you've signed up for the evening. And then on Wednesday, I'm putting it on your radar. It'll either be 6 or 7 at night. On Wednesday, we're going to do a Clubhouse. But we're just going to do pure Clubhouse just to see how it goes. So, in fact, I can tell you right now, it'll be 7 o'clock. So 7 o'clock on Wednesday. I'm going to put it in Clubhouse in a second, or in about a half an hour. But Clubhouse at 7 o'clock, we're going to just do office hours. I mean, it's not going to be any different, and it'll be probably for an hour. And but you're all invited. We'd love to see you all there. Anybody who's got the invite to it. It's really weird. I can't send out a link as an invite. It turns out that you have to like give them access to your addresses and then invite through it, and it's an annoying app.
And it's
it's
iOS only, isn't it?
It is iOS only. So that's why we're not at best we'll do it. We're not going to. I don't want people to feel like they're being left out if they can't get into Clubhouse or anything else. So we're just an experiment. And we may we're going to see what it looks like just raw and see what happens, and then we're going to play around with the idea of piping this into it just to see also what that experience looks like as well. So we're going to start experimenting with Clubhouse because this is the time to get in, is always the time before they open it wide up, is when if you want to stake some territory. And so we're going to do the typical social media thing. You stake territory early and see how it turns out. And you give up on most of them, but you were in early otherwise. Anyway,
Alex, what should we be looking for? So if we want to look for you in Clubhouse,
you just follow me.
Okay.
You can follow me on Clubhouse. It's the same link or the same. It's just Alex Lindsay. So it's easy to find. I got in quick enough to get my name. So you can follow me there. Anyway, we're going to go jump to the post show. See some of you over there on the other side.